There's this quiet moment most men don't talk about. Not out loud, at least. It's that split second right after you stop trying. After the texts go unsent. After you pull your energy back. Not to play games, but because you're tired of feeling like you're pouring into a cup with no bottom. You don't make an announcement. You just stop showing up first. And that's when everything changes. Suddenly, her silence doesn't feel so peaceful anymore. Suddenly, your absence makes more noise than all your words ever did. You were there, fully, available, present, thoughtful, but none of that landed, because it was always there. And when something's always there, it disappears. Now you've stepped back, not to provoke, not to punish, just to protect what little energy you still have. But here's the part no one teaches you. She doesn't realize what you were until you're no longer trying to be it. Not because she's cruel, not because she's playing with you, but because humans, especially in matters of emotion, rarely notice value while it's still easy to access. We assume what's consistent will stay consistent. We think love means showing up again and again, louder and clearer, hoping to finally be seen. But Stoicism has a different message, one that's hard to swallow when your heart is involved. Don't let your peace depend on something you don't control. And here's the twist: her attention, her affection, her responses, none of that is within your control. That's where most men fall. We confuse effort with influence. We think that if we're attentive enough, kind enough, giving enough, she'll choose us. And maybe she will, but maybe she won't. What if the truth is this? It's not about how much you give, but how much you withhold until it's earned. Not out of pride, not out of manipulation, but because you understand something deeper. What is constantly offered loses its impact. You see, a man who never stops reaching eventually becomes invisible. Not because he lacks worth, but because his value is always in plain sight, never missed, never questioned, never felt through absence. And here's where things start to sting. You didn't lose her interest the moment you went quiet. You probably lost it way before that, when you were still showing up too much, too fast, too often. It's not that she didn't care. It's that your presence never gave her the space to wonder. No mystery, no contrast, just constant availability. You don't think you were smothering her, but emotionally you might have been, not intentionally, but still. So now you're silent, not because you're angry, not because you're done, but because something inside you has changed. And in that silence, she starts to feel the gap, not immediately, not loudly, but slowly, quietly, uncomfortably. It's not about the last thing you said. It's about the 100 small ways she noticed your energy is no longer orbiting her. It's in the way your name hasn't popped up in her notifications. It's in the mirror when she gets ready and realizes she didn't think of you this morning, and that unsettles her. You're not haunting her, but you're not easy to forget either. So now here's the real question. What happens to a man when he stops begging to be seen and starts acting like he already matters? Not loudly, not with ego, but quietly with conviction. What does it do to a woman when she no longer feels you chasing her, but starts feeling the echo of the space you left behind? Is it too late? Or is it the moment you finally show up, not as an option, but as something she has to earn now? That's where we're heading. Because once you understand the weight of your absence, you stop spending your life trying to be needed and start becoming unforgettable. The real issue isn't that you cared too much. It's that you forgot something critical in the process of giving. You forgot yourself. Somewhere along the way, between late-night replies, adjusted plans, and constant emotional availability, you placed her at the center of your internal universe. You became orbit. She became gravity. And you call that love. But if you step back, just for a second, and look through the lens of a Stoic, what you're really witnessing is attachment disguised as affection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." But how calm were you, really? Be honest. When she didn't text back, did you feel that sting in your chest? When her energy shifted, did your mind start running scenarios? When she became colder, did you start doing more, hoping to compensate for something you didn't even understand? That's not strength. That's not clarity. That's dependence wearing romantic cologne. And Stoicism, true Stoicism, isn't about being cold or emotionally distant. It's about rooting yourself so deeply in your own value, in your own sense of inner order, that you stop trying to control what's never been yours to control in the first place. You see, desire is tricky. It's not a villain, but it can become one when it's blind. Seneca said, "He who is a slave of desire is more of a slave than he who is forced to carry a chain." Think about that. Most men aren't desperate for love itself. They're desperate to feel wanted, to feel significant, to feel chosen. And when a woman enters your world with beauty, attention, and emotional unpredictability, she triggers something ancient inside of you. You begin chasing not just her, but the feeling of being enough, the validation, the spark, the mirror that says, "You matter." But here's the philosophical trap. You start outsourcing your sense of worth. It's no longer coming from your actions, your growth, your principles. It starts depending on whether she texts you today, whether she seems into you, whether she sees what you're giving. And that shift, though subtle, is where everything begins to fall apart. Because now, her silence isn't just quiet, it's rejection. Now, her mood isn't just her mood, it's a reflection of your worth. Now, her distance doesn't feel like space. It feels like proof that you're not enough. You begin living outside of yourself. And Stoicism warns against this deeply. Epictetus taught, "Some things are up to us, and some are not. You can control your effort. You can control your choices. You cannot control her attention, her pace, her emotional waves." So, why do so many men keep trying? Because of the illusion that more effort equals more love. Because we've been fed this idea that being the nice guy, the emotionally available guy, the giver will earn us loyalty. But here's the psychological root of the whole mess. We mistake consistency for value. We think that being always there will make us essential. But in reality, what's always available becomes background noise. Desire, real magnetic desire, needs contrast. It thrives in polarity. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow self, the unconscious patterns we don't want to look at. And one of those shadows is the people pleaser, the validation seeker, the man who performs love hoping to finally be worthy of it. But here's where it gets dark. The more you perform, the less she feels. Because your energy no longer surprises her. Your presence no longer activates curiosity. You become safe, and safe is not always attractive. Especially not when it comes with anxiety. Especially not when it smells like need. So what do? You stop trying to fill every silence. You stop reacting to every fluctuation in her tone like it's a test. You stop giving away your center in exchange for short-term attention. This isn't about detachment in the cold, clinical sense. This is about self-possession, about coming back to your own gravity. Because here's the truth Stoicism wants you to sit with. She doesn't owe you anything. Not her affection, not her consistency, not even her clarity. What she does or doesn't give is irrelevant to your peace. That's on you. Viktor Frankl once said, "When we are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." You might not be able to change your feelings, but you can change your posture. You can choose how you show up. From need or from value, from chaos or from calm, from hunger or from wholeness. That's the real transformation. And once that shift happens, once you stop viewing her response as your scoreboard, everything else starts to fall into place. But it has to come from within, not to manipulate her, not to win her back, but because you've remembered something she never could give you in the first place. Your worth isn't up for negotiation. You don't realize the damage at first. It sneaks in quietly, disguised as effort, wrapped in good intentions. You start to check your phone more often. You tell yourself it's nothing. You start rearranging your schedule around her. Still nothing, you think. You stay up later just in case she replies. You lower your standards of communication just to keep the thread alive. Before long, you're bending yourself in ways that no longer resemble who you were before she walked in. And what hurts the most? You did all of it in the name of connection. But connection built on self-betrayal is a slow suicide of identity. That's the part nobody warns you about. that you can lose yourself in a dynamic that never actually required you to disappear. But you did it anyway because it felt like the only path. You kept showing up. You kept giving. You kept making space. And slowly, you erased yourself in hopes that she would finally see you. And the worst part? She didn't even ask for it. It's easy to point fingers, to blame her for pulling away. But the deeper truth? You gave her a version of yourself that was built on fear, not on truth. You thought if you didn't respond fast enough, she'd forget about you. If you didn't affirm her enough, she'd lose interest. If you didn't make yourself emotionally accessible, she'd disappear. But in trying to prevent that loss, you became the one who vanished first. Not physically, but psychologically. You stopped doing the things that made you magnetic in the first place. You stopped honoring your time, your mission, your peace. You became over-available, over-explanatory, over-accommodating. And she felt it, not in a conscious, malicious way, but energetically. The man she first felt drawn to, centered, clear, grounded, was no longer present. In his place was someone softening, adapting, chasing. And that shift, though invisible in words, is obvious in vibration. You weren't standing in your power anymore. You were standing in her shadow, hoping she'd look back and choose you. Stoicism draws a hard line here, because this is the moment where your inner fortress either collapses or gets rebuilt. When you abandon yourself for love, you're not loving, you're pleading. And pleading isn't noble. It's not courageous. It's rooted in ego, the ego that believes love must be earned through sacrifice instead of self-respect. And here's what happens next. Your mood becomes unstable. You start to overanalyze everything she says or doesn't say. One dry text ruins your day. One delay in response sparks an entire story in your head. You're no longer choosing your actions based on what feels right to you. You're reacting to her emotional weather like a man caught in a storm with no shelter. Epictetus would call this giving power to externals, letting your well-being be dictated by what you cannot control. But that's what most men don't realize until it's too late. You don't just lose her when you chase. You lose yourself. You lose the man who had a mission, the man who had structure, the man who used to move with clarity. And in his place stands someone uncertain, uncentered, weak, not because he lacks potential, but because he abandoned his core. And the woman? She feels it. She might not be able to name it. But attraction is energetic before it's logical. She'll say she needs space. She'll pull back without explanation. She'll suddenly stop feeling it. Not because you change your cologne, but because you stop being rooted. The desire that once sparked between you, it's gone. Not because she's ungrateful, but because you no longer felt like a man with gravity. Stoicism offers an antidote here, but it's not soft. It's not warm. It's brutal in a freeing way. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." So ask yourself, what have you been estimating? What story have you built around her attention? What belief have you formed about your value being tied to her validation? The longer you stay in this loop, the more you shrink. And no one, not even her, can love a man who shrinks to fit a place he was never meant to occupy. You weren't born to chase love. You were born to embody it, to become it in your actions, your presence, your purpose. But when all of your energy is funneled toward being chosen, you lose your ability to choose. You stop filtering what you accept. You stop honoring what you feel. You become a man of reactions instead of a man of intention. And eventually, even if she comes back, she's coming back to someone who no longer remembers his worth. And that reunion, it won't heal what was lost, because what was lost was you. So how do you break out? How do you go from being the man who waits for her attention to the man who doesn't need it to breathe? You stop chasing silence and start listening to your own. You sit in the absence, not as punishment, not to provoke, but as practice, a return. The rebellion begins internally, not with some flashy act of revenge or a dramatic goodbye. That's still about her. Real rebellion is quieter. It starts when you look at the parts of yourself that you abandoned trying to be chosen, and you take them back. The Stoics never taught detachment as escape. They taught self-governance, to be ruled by nothing outside yourself, not praise, not rejection, not desire. No man is free who is not master of himself, said Epictetus. So this is your turning point, not a rage-filled transformation, but a calm re-entry into your own body, a choice to stop trying to be unforgettable and instead to be rooted. That means you stop checking the phone like it owes you hope. You stop crafting texts with the secret intent of provoking a response. You stop building your confidence on how she sees you that day. And you start doing something radical. You honor your time. You protect your energy. You reclaim your center. Sounds poetic, right? But it's not abstract. It's practical. It's visible. It's a shift in every small action. She posts a story that used to mess with your head. You let it pass. Not because you're numb, but because you no longer give away your peace so cheaply. You feel the urge to text just a reminder you exist? You don't, because you remembered something. You were never meant to be a reminder. You were meant to be a force. And forces don't knock at closed doors. They move where they're welcomed. You want her back? Here's the truth. You don't get her back by going toward her. You get her back by going toward yourself. Start showing up where you went missing, not just at the gym or with your goals, but in the conversations you stop having with yourself. Who are you outside of her eyes? What do you believe in that doesn't change based on her attention? What are you building whether she watches or not? These are the questions that lead you out of the fog, not to become indifferent, but to become whole again. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And most men waste years chasing ghosts, hoping if they just do enough, she'll finally see them clearly. But doing more isn't the answer. Being more is. And being more starts with boundaries. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop compromising your path for someone who hasn't earned the right to stand beside it. You stop trying to be the nice guy in hopes of affection, and you start becoming a man of depth, with or without applause. And when you walk like that, when your energy no longer begs, when your attention becomes deliberate, when your silence doesn't feel like a threat, but a natural part of your rhythm, she feels it, not in her head, where logic lives, in her body, in that quiet, restless moment when she realizes you're not orbiting anymore, you're not reacting, you're not available on demand, you're not auditioning, you're just there, or not, but always intact. That's where the magnetism is. Not in pretending you don't care, but in knowing you don't need to prove anything anymore. Because here's the secret. Women don't fall for men who chase. They fall for men who are already anchored. And anchoring means knowing that her attention is not the measure of your masculinity. Her validation is not the trophy for your devotion. Her desire is not your compass. You become your own compass. You start listening to your own standards again. You stop collapsing at every sign of emotional resistance. You see, most men are not destroyed by rejection. They're destroyed by their reaction to it, by the story they tell themselves when someone pulls away. But you're different now, because now you understand. Her absence isn't a hole to fall into. It's a mirror, a moment, an invitation back to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's where you should have been all along. Because she doesn't need you until she feels what she lost when you stopped needing her. It always ends in silence. Not the kind that breaks things. The kind that rebuilds them. One day you just stop needing answers. You stop hoping that the next message will fix something. You stop replaying every detail, trying to find a moment where it shifted, where she drifted, where you overreached. You stop explaining yourself to a presence that no longer listens the same. And you realize something unsettling. You were never supposed to chase this. Not because love doesn't require effort, but because real love doesn't make you betray yourself in the process. Here's the truth most men never get to. You were never broken. Not because she didn't choose you. Not because she pulled away. Not because she couldn't see your worth. You were broken because you believed you had to prove your worth in the first place. That's the real tragedy. Not the loss of her, but the temporary loss of yourself while trying to be enough for her. Stoicism doesn't teach you how to win someone back. It teaches you how to come back to yourself when the world doesn't give you what you want. Epictetus said, "You are a soul carrying a corpse, a reminder that what matters most isn't what people see. It's what you carry inside." So let's be honest. She might never come back. She might move on. She might not miss you in the way you hoped she would. But that was never the point. Because the day you stopped giving her your attention on autopilot, the day you chose your silence over your need, the day you stopped explaining, stopped chasing, stopped hoping, something deeper shifted. You stopped waiting to be loved and started learning how to love your own company. And that's the man she can't forget. Not because you haunted her inbox, but because your absence was peaceful, centered. Oh, you didn't leave in anger. You didn't try to make her jealous. You didn't post vague quotes hoping she'd read them. You just left, not because you gave up on love, but because you chose to stop abandoning yourself to find it. And when a man can do that, when he can walk away without hatred, when he can let go without drama, when he can disappear without making a performance, that absence echoes. Because she doesn't just remember how you touched her. She remembers how you held yourself, how you didn't beg, how you didn't spiral, how you didn't reduce yourself to win something you didn't even need. And maybe one day, she'll look back and realize you weren't trying to be unforgettable. You were just free. And that's what made you unforgettable. See, the final truth isn't that she needs you now. It's that you never needed her to become who you were meant to be. She was the mirror, but not the answer. She reflected back where you had lost your power, where you had made someone else's presence more important than your own clarity. And the moment you saw it, not with resentment, not with bitterness, but with understanding, you changed the story. That's Stoicism, not the denial of emotion, but the refusal to be ruled by it. Not apathy, but apatheia, the calm within the storm, the inner stillness that doesn't flinch at loss, the strength that stays even when everything else leaves. You want to know what power really is? It's walking away, not to prove anything, but because your peace costs more than someone's temporary affection. It's no longer chasing being needed, because you become enough without needing to be wanted. It's understanding that your presence has gravity, but your absence, that's what defines your value. She doesn't need you until she feels that. Not because you vanished out of spite, but because you showed her what a man looks like when he doesn't trade his soul for a little warmth. She might remember your smile. She might remember your touch. But she will never forget the day you disappeared. Not in anger, not in sorrow, but with grace. That kind of man, the one who doesn't explain his absence, who doesn't beg for closure, who doesn't try to be understood, that man becomes a memory she can't place but never fully escapes. Because he wasn't a chapter, he was a turning point, and she'll feel that long after the last message fades. So here's your final reminder, the one you didn't know you needed. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose yourself so clearly, so consistently, so unshakably, that even when you walk away, you leave behind a kind of silence. That sounds like truth. Stay grounded, stay still, and let her feel what it truly means. To miss a man who no longer begs to be missed. That's not just stoicism. That's liberation.